Okay, so going to have a look at a common problem with a Shimano Ultegra 6700 10-speed shifter. This is a right-hand shifter, and the problem is the release lever doesn't shift down. So that lever shifts and nothing happens. And the reason is that this little lever in here, put this on the table, that little lever in there is not returning to its reset position, to its home position, and that's due to a lack of spring tension. There's a spiral spring. You can just see the spring here. That's the spring there. You can see just the edge of it. And over time it either breaks on these models or it loses tension. And what happens is this little lever here does not return. So what will happen is if I push that down manually and return it to its position, the lever will now work as it should. So it's clicked there. Bit difficult to see, but it's now working. Unfortunately, you can't manually reset it all the time while you're riding. So what we need to do is take it apart, and we can make a repair to the spring. This is where the spring clips into the body of and you can see that it's very loose. The spring's not where it clips in here. There's very little tension, so it needs to be tightened, and I'll show you how to do that. So pictured here is the spiral return spring, which I've removed, and I'll show you how to shorten that and increase the tension. All you do is just snip it, as you can see, at the right angle bit there, which goes into the little lever, and you just take a little bit of length off, as you can see. And then you take the end, and with a pair of pliers you just put a little right angle in it, as you can see to the right there, and replicate the bit that you've just snipped off that inserts into the lever within the derailleur assembly. So that's a photo of the release lever that's been removed from the larger lever assembly. You can see on the left there where the spring and the right angle you've just made inserts into the lever. You can see the little sleeve that the tweezers are holding, and all of that slots onto the end of the assembly. And you can see in the middle where the axle is inserted, and the axle holds the entire internal shifting assembly in place. So you just pull that axle back a little bit after loosening it, disengaging it from the nut, and you pull it back so that you can slide that assembly out, and then hold it, and then you just insert it back in as it is shown there. So that's where the Allen key goes. It's into loosening the bolt on which the shifter assembly is mounted. And you can see the Allen key on the right, and you can imagine where the axle goes right through the centre there with all of the assembly on it. And pictured there with the arrow pointing to it is the nut, that when you loosen the bolt, the nut will be loose, and then you can retract the bolt enough to remove the assembly that I showed you before, which is how you get the spring out. So when you put the assembly back in, you then push the bolt back in and tighten it up against the nut. So you just remove it enough to pull the assembly out. So here's what the release lever assembly looks like when it's correctly in place in the lever. Just a reminder that this is the release lever assembly as pictured as removed. What you can see here is the lever with that release lever assembly removed now. So you can see there that there's a gap where the release lever has been extracted from the device, you just slide it out and you can see the other items are held nicely in place. When you're putting it back in, after you've done your repair to the spring in this case, what you can see is the assembly being pushed in. It just slides in before you lock it in with the axle by pushing the axle back in. And what I've circled there is the pawl on top of the release lever assembly. The pawl is the little spring-loaded pawl, and what you need to ensure is that it is inserted with the pawl facing in the direction of the arrow so that the spring tension will push it downwards away from into the screen as you're viewing it, so it'll push it downwards with the spring tension. And you've got to ensure that it's oriented that way as you insert the release lever assembly back in, otherwise the pawl won't be engaged properly. Here it is, back reassembled, and you'll see that the lever is nicely sitting snugly against the main lever there, which means that the spring tension is good and it's pushing it back, and you'll see that it's a nice and positive release action as we go down through the gears. So that's now working well.